Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Legros, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Marketa, we feel at home. I would like to welcome all of you to the first UNDP CBIT virtual study tour to look at greenhouse gas inventory management in the Czech Republic. And my name is Susan Legros. I'm the Chief Technical Advisor for the project, and it is a pleasure to welcome you here, hybrid, virtual, but nonetheless here with us. And we will try to do everything to make it as though you were here. When I first talked to Mrs. Krtkova about this idea in the spring of 2020, we had no idea all of the things that might happen. And I am just delighted that we have been able to make this work thanks to the flexibility of Hydromet. And I look forward to getting things started this morning. First on our agenda, our introductions. So first, I'd like my colleagues from Hydromet to introduce themselves, and then I think we'll switch over to you in Skopje.
Okay, so good morning also from my side. My name is Eva Krtkova, and I used to be a coordinator of National Inventory System. Officially or administratively, I'm still a coordinator, but I'm on a maternity leave now. And so now the National Inventory System is led by my colleague Marketa.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Marketa Krtkova, and I'm the deputy, and I started coordinating National Inventory System after Eva left for her maternity leave. So I must say that I'm quite new in this coordination work, but previously I worked as a sectoral expert on industrial processes and product use. So that's all, I think.
Perfect. Okay, so now I would like to give the floor to Pavlina Zdraveva, the UNDP JEF CBIT project manager in Skopje. Good morning, Skopje.
Good morning. Good morning. I would like to join you in welcoming us on this virtual study tour, and to thank you all for your engagement and for your efforts. I look forward to the discussion we will have today and tomorrow, and to be able to exchange experience. So we wear masks because unfortunately we are a lot of people than you are there. So as Susan introduced me, I'm project manager, and I would like to give floor to my colleagues. We will start with the colleagues from the Macedonian Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning.
Hi. My name is Triton. I come from Ministry of Environment, and I represent the waste department.
Hello to everyone. I'm Zuli Recepi. I also come from the Ministry of Environment, Administration of Environment in the Department of the Waste. Also, I am new in this topic, so we're going to see.
Morning to you. My name is Marian Mikhailov. I'm an environmental consultant by profession, and I'm part of the quality assurance team. I'm providing such services in the quality assurance aspect in the area of waste management for a couple of years. I'm great to be part of this unusual event. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emilia Mikhailovska, and I'm from the junior expert from Macedonian Academy of Science and Art, which is part of the team in the energy sector.
Hello, my name is Arminda Rushiti. I'm coming from Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning, Department of Macedonian Informational center from the unit analytic and reporting, but I'm working about issues from waste, but I'm covering also the issues regarding the inventory air emission, the part for agriculture and natural resources. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Verisa Tasaska-Georgievska. I come from the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts, the Research Center for Energy and Sustainable Development. I've been working on developing GHG inventory since 2006, first as a sectoral expert in energy, then sectoral expert for several other sectors, IPP and waste. And for the past few inventories, I've been compiling the inventory and coordinating the inventory development team. Thank you.
Hello to everybody. I'm Irina Filipovska. I'm part of the CBIT team from UNDP, supporting the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning. I'm an architect working with climate change in the process of making the spatial plan of the Republic. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Filip Kondowski, and I'm also part of the CBIT team for UNDP and working for Pavlina and Rancho. I'm working in the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy in North Macedonia on mainstreaming climate change in the gender equality policies and documents. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elena Gavrilova. I work as a country coordinator of the Open Regional Fund for Energy, Transport and Climate Policy of GIZ Macedonia. And I'm also very often in the role of the quality assurance expert of the National GHG Inventory. And I'm also lead reviewer of Annex 1 GHG inventories under UNFCCC and non-annex GHG inventories. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Spasovska, and I'm also part of the CBIT project team. I'm working in the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy in mainstreaming gender and climate change policy. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lencha Petrova. I come from State Statistical Office, and I work in Department of Agriculture, Forestry, Hunting and Fishery. And I'm responsible for forestry and hunting data and indicators. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Traian Čanumovski, project assistant of the CBIT project, among others.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Katerina Gyurgyulova-Agovska, and I'm coming from State Statistical Office. I'm head of Department for Agriculture, Forestry, Hunting and Fishery. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Suzana Stoyanovska. I'm working in State Statistical Office of the Republic of North Macedonia, responsible for waste statistics, water statistics, and recently for development of environmental accounts. And the newest area is air emission accounts, and in the close cooperation with Ministry of Environment and Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts, I used these inventories of pollution and greenhouse gases. Thank you.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Lyubchur Nestorovsky. I'm professor at the Faculty of Forestry. I'm part of a team that is doing inventory of GHG, especially for forestry sector and land use change. Thank you.
That would be all from our side. As per the agenda, I think that we can continue with the presentation of our inventory.
Excellent, let's do that.
Slyšíte dobře?
Jo.
Super.
If you can enable us to share screen.
Yeah. Great.
Can you see our screen now?
Yes, we can. It's perfect.
As a GAG inventory compiler, I will try to briefly show how our process is done. And then a colleague from the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning will continue with presenting their work. So first, I hope you can see how our process is organized for developing the GAG inventory in the framework of the biannual update reports and national communication. So few key players are involved in this process. First is the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning, which is responsible for development by law to develop the inventory. But since the capacity in the ministry, there is no capacity in the ministry to do that, they are supported by inventory development team, which is composed from representatives from two institutions. One is the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts, the Research Center for Energy and Sustainable Development, which is responsible for developing the inventory for energy, IPPU and waste sectors. And the other is the University St. Cyril and Methodius, with the Faculty of Forestry, Faculty of Agricultural Science and Agricultural Institute, which are part of this university and responsible for developing the inventory for agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. So the last few inventories were in a form institutionalized in development. So before, in the first national communication, sectoral experts were engaged, but now this part is done by these two institutions. Again, experts that are involved have experience and were previously involved in the process. So, but now in a more frequent way, they update the inventory, and the other key player in the process is the verification team, which in our case, we have engaged experts, national experts, to first check, to assure the quality of the inventory. But before that, part of the teams control the quality of the data, check the quality of the data, whether it's entered well. Then the quality assurance process with national experts is taking place. And after that, in the second and third national biennial report, we have international quality assurance by experts from Global Support Program. Also, quality assurance is enabled through the chief technical advisor that is checking the inventory, also the National Climate Change Committee, and I already mentioned the Global Support Program. Without data supply, all this process will not be realized. So other key player is our data supplier. So the key data source is the State Statistical Office, because it covers all sectors covered by the inventory. So reports, online database, yearbooks published by these institutions are constantly included in the developing of the inventory. And for each of the sectors, we have used sources, the responsible ministry for the sectors, and the relevant companies and institutions working in that field to fill the gaps that we find missing for the activity data and for the emission factors in the process of development. Also, beside the national institution, and we use international databases as data sources where, for example, for population, for GDP data, historical data that we don't have maybe at national level for a longer period. And for AFOLU sector, we use satellite imagery from different sources. All this process is supported by UNDP through GF funding. So the methodology used in our inventory, current methodology that we use, is the 2006 IPCC guidelines. And in the past few, in the inventory for third biannual report and now in the fourth communication, the refinements of the IPCC guidelines were taken into consideration for several subsectors. We developed the inventory using the inventory software from IPCC, the latest version available from January 18, 2019. We decided to use, even though we are not Annex 1 country, that it's not obliged to use the IPCC fourth assessment report for global warming factors. We decided as an aspiring country for you to use these factors in our inventory. So in the fourth national communication, these factors are used for all sectors. The gases that are covered with the inventory are GHG gases. You already know most of them, all of them. SF6 are not included because of lack of data to report them. And also we estimate the indirect emissions and precursors based on the activity data used for the GHG emissions. Inventory covers the period from 1990 to 2019, the latest version, prepared for the fourth national communication, which is in a process of finalizing, still not publicly available, but it will be soon. The latest update in this inventory was for the years from 2017 to 2019. And we use, for most of the sectors, tier 1 method, but for energy, industry, IPPU, and waste sector, we use tier 2 method. I will explain in which parts more in details in next slides. Here is a summary of all the processes that included in GHG inventory development. So for the first 3 national communication marked with green lines, we used IPCC 1996 guidelines, and only one revision of the data was done in the second national communication due to better activity data available. Starting from the first biannual report, we used IPCC 2006 guidelines. So based on the new guidelines, the whole time series were recalculated for the period reported before. That's why another recalculations here is reported. And in the third biannual report, a revision was made because source of data was changed for, I think, for IPPU sector. And some updated data from the statistical office were available. That's why we revised again the series, and in the latest inventory, new approach, new methodology for land use change was used. Another revision was made for the whole time series. For energy sector, we use updated version of the energy balances. That's why we revised in the second biennial report the series and continue to update this as necessary. Here are the emission trends of presenting the net emissions, including the sinks from the forestry and other land uses categories. So as you can see, we have slight increase comparing to 1990 and even to 2060, which was the last year in the previous report, in the previous biennial update report. This is mainly because in the 2017-2019 there are forest fires, and you can see in other years there are fluctuations in the net emissions because of the forest fires, which instead of sinks we have emissions. So if we want to see only the emissions, if we exclude the forestry and other land use sectors, we can see that we have reduction of the emissions compared to 1990 levels for around 9%. But again, in the last 3 years, we have slight increase of around 12% due to the intensified electricity generation from national sources mainly, but also there are some changes in other sectors which will be seen in other slides shown by sectors after this. Most of the emissions are CO2, and the other significant share that is the methane emissions. As I mentioned before, we also estimate the precursors and indirect emissions, which are shown here, following similar pattern as the GHG emissions. So, going deep diving in the specific sectors, in our case, from the energy sectors, we only report fuel combustion emissions and fugitive emissions, only for latest years for production of solid fuels from the surface mines and from oil and gas industries. From the main source of the emissions actually is the fuel combustion activities, mainly the energy industries, followed by manufacturing industries and transport, and the other is commercial and residential sector. Here are the emission trends in these sectors. Main sources, as I said, are the energy industries, electricity generation mainly, followed by transport in the latest years, and also a significant share have the fuel combustion activities in manufacturing industries and construction. Most of the emissions are CO2. Several improvements have been made in the past years in this sector. First, the alignment of the methodology for the development of energy balances, which is the main source of the activity data for the energy sector, and I can say mainly, maybe the only one in the latest years, because it has similar pattern. The energy balance follows similar pattern as the IPCC division by sectors for the energy. So we have made improvement, not with, but the institution, the Ministry of Economy and the State Statistical Office have aligned their methodology by using the Eurostat methodology in developing energy balances. So, which is a benefit for us to have data which are in line between the institution as a source information. So with collaboration with the Energy Department of the State Statistical Office, we have overcome some data irregularities or possible uncertainties in terms of the activity data used. So whether we have some uncertainty whether the data is not correct or we are missing some data, we always have good collaboration with the Energy Department of State Statistical Office to provide this data when necessary. The latest improvement that we have made, maybe I will come later. Another thing, while I'm talking about the energy balances, is that we use the natural units as an input data, but also we use the same data expressed in Krtkova to calculate the terajoules, the conversion of the activity data in terajoules, and we calculate the calorific value of the fuel consumed based on the energy balances in order to not have differences between the reference and sectoral approach, because State Statistical Office aggregates data from several institutions, so the average calorific value for the fuels is used based on the energy balance derived from those data. So another improvement made in the latest inventory is that we disaggregate the activity data for road transportation by vehicle type provided in the IPCC methodology and IPCC software. Using the data from the corporate there was inventory developed for road transportation with corporate in the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning. So the recalculation was made of the emissions at a more disaggregated level for the whole time series. That is another of the reasons for the recalculations of the time series presented in the previous slides. In addition to these improvements for fossil fuel combustion activities, we use the average CO2 emission factor for fugitive emissions from surface mines based on the latest refinements from 2019 of the guidelines. Another good practice in our country is the use of tier 2 methodology for estimation of the emissions in the energy sector. In the first 3 national communication, we used country-specific emission factors based on calculated based on the methodology 1996, where the oxidation factor was fractions were less than 1. But with the update with 2006 IPCC guidelines, this oxidation factor is changed. And starting from the first biannual report, the country-specific factors were recalculated for lignite, residual fuel, and natural gas using these guidelines. The latest calculation of update actually is for the natural gas for 2017, 2018, and 2019. Due to the lack of the data, the lignite and residual fuel oil are not updated for the last few years, but even though we use the calculation from the previous inventories, country-specific factors. For the future inventories, we recommend, in order to overcome these obstacles in updating country-specific emission factors, to establish secure and constant channels to acquire data with the relevant institution. Also, we are planning, because there is evident biogas power plants production, electricity generation from these power plants, to include this kind of data, but at this moment, no reliable information are available to include this in the inventory. So we hope we will overcome this in the future inventories. And another thing is to improve the reporting on non-GHG emissions from road transportation using corporate estimation. We will hope to improve this in the future inventories. The second sector is the industrial processes and product uses. We only report emissions from mineral industry, metal industry, and products used as substitutes for ODS substances. The time series from these sectors are very interesting, because
beginning of the period, most of the emissions are from the metal industries, followed by the minerals. But in the last few years, the situation has changed. The mineral industry is taking most of the share of the emissions, and followed in the several years the product uses and as a substitute for ODS. The metal industry, due to the reduced production from several industries, closure actually of the aluminum production and lead production has led to decrease in these emissions. As you can see, the fluorinated gases in the past few years, the emissions of these gases have increased. Here in this sector, an improvement was made in the previous inventory in terms of aligning the activity data for the whole time series using the state statistical reports and annual publications for previous years. All the sectors were aligned with NAC codes. Recalculation also was made in the last inventory on the HFC gases based on the new data for import of F gases provided by the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning. More detailed data were provided now. So that's why we updated the series. And in the previous inventory, some emissions were identified, so we improved the assumed lifetime. We corrected, actually, corrections were made for the assumed lifetime of the equipment for these F gases, that uses F gases. I mentioned already the sources of main sources of information, but for the mineral industry and iron and steel industry, we use also annual reports from the key sources of emission, the industrial companies. For the future inventories, main obstacles here are the lack of data for calculation of SF6 emissions, also other emissions like F gases from fire protection and aerosols that we are hoping to and trying to improve in our future inventories. Also, we want to disaggregate the emissions for refrigeration based on the equipment, but still no disaggregated data at that level are available. The next sector is the agriculture, forestry, and land uses. Most of the categories are covered from these sectors. Only biomass burning and liming are not included and are not reported. Here, the emissions trends are interesting because we have, besides the emission, also sinks, and the fluctuations in the net emissions are, as I explained before, due to the forest fires. That's why here the key category is are the livestock emissions and the emissions and mainly sinks, actually, not emissions from the forest land. The main sources for the livestock are State Statistical Office, Ministry of Environment, and for the latest inventory, a survey was performed, supported by UNDP on the livestock population for the past for the period 2007 to 2019. And here, based on this survey, a tier 2 approach was used for calculation, and an improvement was made in the inventory. For the land, different sources, various sources are used. Generally from the State Statistical Office for the area of land area, but also new approach, as I mentioned, was used for land use changes using satellite images. Also, the relevant Ministry for Agriculture, Forestry, and Water Economy is publication from this ministry are used, and reports and from the expert team, because they work at the university, they have their research that is involved, included here in the development. As I already mentioned, tier 2 approach is used in livestock, but in land, maybe we can discuss in details in the future sessions how this improvement in the methodology was performed using new approach for with satellite images. For the future inventories, this tier 2 application is, we are hoping to apply this tier 2 method for the other years. Once data are available or another survey is performed, and for the land to continue to improve the data for the land use changes on a regular basis, also for the forestry data based on forest inventories that are planned to be developed in other institutions. For the waste sector, four main categories are covered as per IPCC methodology. Only we don't report in our inventory only anaerobic digestion at biogas facilities because we don't have this kind of emissions from waste. We have only from biogas production, only from agricultural waste, which is excluded in the agricultural sector, but based on the survey data done. The GHG, the trend of GHG emissions, as you can see, main source around 80% is from the solid waste disposal. And another key source is the wastewater treatment and discharge. Most of the emissions are methane, and you can see again, State Statistical Office is the main sources. Reports from the State Statistical Office are used. For the solid waste disposal, the Maxstat online database and also the publication for the previous years on the municipal solid waste were used. Also the amount of waste by section of economic activities for industrial waste. For the UN statistic for the GDP at current prices was used, the national estimates for whole time series was updated. Here we use also tier 2 approach using the national data on composition of waste and the amount of waste disposed at solid waste disposal site. For the biological treatment of solid waste, the data on composting of waste from the annual reports of Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning is used. For incineration and open burning of waste, national data from the Dristela landfill, which is only a landfill that incinerates medical waste in the country. And for the wastewater treatment and discharge, we use the estimation of population based on the statistical reports, estimations made at the end of the year from the online database, but also the annual publications on the industry production in natural units for the industrial wastewaters. Improvements that have been made are, we updated, as I mentioned, the composition of waste going to solid waste disposal based on the regional waste management plans. Also, recalculation of the percentage of waste disposed on disposal sites was made based on national data, and also with collaboration with our QA expert, it was decided which share will be used for open burning of waste. Waste composting activities have been introduced since the second biennial update report and reported in all subsequent inventories. The incineration of clinical waste has been reported since the third biennial report. We identified that there are data existing but were not included. And in the latest inventory, the Dristela landfill published updated values for this, and this recalculation was also made for the time series available there. And another improvement that we have made for industrial wastewater treatment, in the previous inventory, very few categories were covered, but now we updated using the NAC codes, and more data, more sectors were included here. and a vision was made for the whole time series for each of these sectors presented here at the bottom. For the future inventories, we are hoping to, now we have not new, but the latest publication from the State Statistical Office provides more disaggregate data for waste generated from manufacturing industries, by industry types. So we hope that in the future inventories, we could have information to use the DOC factors default based on the IPCC guideline for each of this category. Now we use the default for other, which is one. So this, we hope this will be improved in future inventories. And another recommendation is to include the sludge generation for wastewater treatment plants. But again, we have the generation of wastewater, the sludge generation, but we lack the data of the processes that are used in these wastewater treatment plants. So maybe from another study or survey on the wastewater treatment plants in future inventories, we could improve this. So this was shortly on the pH inventory. Next is the air pollution inventory.
Hi again. I will give a brief presentation about the current status of implementation of the NES-CD directive of Republic of North Macedonia, and the future steps. The legislation which is used is that the directive, National Emissions Ceiling Directive for 2010 is the old one, which is 100% transposed. But the Directive 2016 is not transposed yet in national legislation, but it needs to be, it will be transposed in the IPA technical project, which is planned to be in 2022 and 2023. The other legislation that are used are LTAP Convention 1997, only protocols ratified in 2010. We are part of the Göteborg Protocol in 2014, and amendment of the three last protocols are not ratified yet. The law on ambient air quality prepared and adopted in 2004, and it is amended several times. The bylaws that are used are on bylaw on national emission ceilings, bylaw on the use of EMET methodology as national methodology, bylaw on emission limit values, and bylaw on emission measurements. The emission data gathering and processing. As you know, according to the Article 40, the law of environment, the Macedonian Environmental Information Center, as a department within the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning, is a single national entity which is responsible for preparation of emission inventories. Macedonian Environmental Information Center within the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning has the overall responsibility and submits the inventory report to the Convention on Large Range Transboundary Air Pollution. Within the MATE, experts from the different departments are contributing, whereby experts from the Division of Analytics and Reporting are compiling the reporting in the inventory. As you can see in this table, there are the data flows that are presented, and the full air emission inventory is using the and including many other sectors. As sectors in Macedonia Information Center is the unit for analysis and report, which is responsible for preparation and reporting on the inventory. There are including several experts. Then IT units, which prepares the database administration, air quality monitoring units, which deals with measuring air quality concentration, and the unit for catastrophe and modeling, preparing the gridding data and projections. The data which are providers and which we have collaboration with other institutions. As you can see, there are industrial operators, State Statistical Office, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Water Supply, and Ministry of Interior. National Air Emission Inventory, Informative Inventory Reports for the first time was reporting in 2005. The Coordinator methodology established in 2006 with the European Topic Center and Air and Climate Change. Emission inventory prepared by a consulting company until 2020, and National Emission Inventory Team established in 2016. There are 5 experts and 1 IT expert which are included. Emission inventory is reported regularly on a yearly basis for all pollutants for all time series, 1919 and 2020 this year. For as you can see, for SOx, NOx, CO, NH3, ammonium, MVOC, TCP, PM10, PM2.5, 2.5, heavy metals and POPs until 15 February. The first informative inventory report was reported in 2006. For the years 2006, 2010, and 2020 were prepared by consulting company, and the first informative inventory report in compliance with UNESE, a guidebook prepared by Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning team in cooperation with UBA Austria in 2015. And reported in 2060, and it is annually reporting each year. The stage 3 review conducted in 2011, 16, and 2020, and also we have made a recommendation for stage 3 review reports implemented in the upcoming reports. International reporting, EEA and UNEC. The inventory of air pollutants is prepared and submitted annually. The inventory information report is submitted annually. Emission from large combustion plants are reported each year according to Energy Community Agreement. The gridded data and large point sources are data are reported on every 4 years. And as you can see in this web page, you can see the data that are published and sent it to the EEA. Next slide is about emission data gathering, processing, and gaps. There is an urgent need that we should to prepare the data integration, processing, and preparing of data sets for the data collecting and reporting. The data aggregation of the reporting emissions is done manually. There are some aggregation models in the available software solution, but during the manual data collection, these tools are not used. Reporting data gathered through email are collected and aggregated in Excel files for different purposes. Data verification of the reported air emission data is done manually by mates, employees. For example, for air emission, dairy, cadastre data, and PRTR, all presented data in Macedonia Information Center is organized in Excel file, while IPPC reports are organized in Word format, and all documents are located on the servers in Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning at the sector of Macedonia Information Center. PRTR data is in the Dube software database. Recommendation of National Information System project. There is an ongoing project which in future will be done. And there we have decided for some recommendations. For example, the operators should register the National Inventory Information System and fulfill all needed air emissions data for all requirements under different laws, sub-laws, and international obligations. The National Information System should be established to collect data from industry, installation for the energy production and administrative capacities. This is recognized as a mandatory data sets necessary for emission calculation for inventory preparation of the inventories and fulfilling Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning, national and international obligations. Then should be done the merging of legal obligation of data reporting of two existing rule books for catastrophe for air polluters and rule book on ambient air emission data submission from stationary sources. Then all operators industry should be able to choose codes for specific nomenclatures that will be defined and mentioned on the level of the whole national information system. Then linking the collected air emission data and outputs that need to be generated for preparation on national air emission inventories. And operators that have obligation to report air emission measurements under IPPC permits should be able to report the data via a national information system, and experts from IPPC department should be granted and access to the data in questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So this was a presentation from Macedonian circumstances when it comes to greenhouse gas reporting. We would be able to discuss them further into the detailed sessions per sector. I would like to thank representatives from both the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning and the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts for the presentation, and we are over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much to the presenters. I think that was a really good way to start off with a very comprehensive overview of all of the requirements that you have to meet, but also how you are continuously improving and sort of the ways that you are thinking about improving into the future. So on that note, I would like to see if there are any questions from Hydromet experts about either of the presentations. Any clarification you might want?
I think that it will be better to discuss it during the sectoral
okay, good.
sessions.
So we can talk about it during the sectors. So in the meantime, I think our next item on the agenda would be a discussion of the management of the Czech greenhouse gas inventory. And I think the original impetus behind this particular exchange was the fact that the Czech Republic is required to report not only to the UNFCCC, but also to the EU and to the energy community. And so it's an interesting kind of look into the future for North Macedonia. So on that note, I will give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you for the presentation. So good morning again from our side as well. So we are actually based in the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute, the whole national inventory system. Why is it not moving forward, the presentation?
See what we can do.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to present for you some information about the general issues in the greenhouse gas inventory of the Czech Republic.
We cannot see the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You have it? Great, okay.
Okay, thanks. So I will try to tell you a little bit about the development, how we actually got into the state we are now and so on, so you would have a better idea of some development issues and some improvements and so on. Generally, if we are talking about the general issues of the inventory, we are talking about the institutional arrangements, about the possible changes of national inventory system, about the timeline, how the GHG inventory is actually prepared, generally about emission trends in each sector, about some cross-cutting issues where we have to be careful in order to not over or underestimate or double count some of the emissions. Also about the key categories, how the key categories are actually estimated, how the uncertainties are assessed in the inventory in each of the sectors and also overall for the inventory. Also under the general issues, we are talking about some overview of the main recalculations which have been done since the latest inventory was reported. Also about the indirect emissions, QA/QC issues, and last but not least, also an archiving. So in the Czech Republic, the official national entity which is actually responsible for the national greenhouse gas inventory is the Ministry of Environment. That is actually like an official entity. However, the technical work by itself and all the reporting and so on is done by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. I would say that this is very common case that officially the responsibility for the inventory from the UNFCCC point of view is on a government. So it is usually some of the ministries, and very often the work for the national inventory is dedicated towards some of specific or scientific or technical institutions which is then actually focusing on the issues related to the inventory. So in our case, the Ministry of Environment is providing a supervision of the national inventory system. It's responsible for the negotiations under the UNFCCC and is supposed to enter the contact with relevant other governmental bodies in case we need their cooperation for the preparation of the inventory. Practically, it goes that way that a whole inventory is prepared and coordinated by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute and National Inventory System sectoral experts. However, before we actually report it towards the European Union or under the UNFCCC, the inventory always go for approval for the Ministry of Environment, which is sending the whole inventory to the intergovernmental, interministerial working group of people who actually has time and possibility to comment and actually ask for some improvements and so on. So this way it is actually ensured that the inventory which is reported then officially has been actually seen by any possible governmental institution or any ministry which is then possibly using the outcomes of the inventory and might have some further questions. So this way we are ensuring that all data and all reported issues are in line with the expectations of IPCC and also with the expectations of our government. So the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute is actually specifically asked, and we have a specific document which is providing us with the responsibility of coordinating and managing the inventory. So we are the institute responsible for the compilation of the national greenhouse gas inventory and for the actually reporting of the submissions. So even though it's supervised and approved by the ministry, even the reporting by itself is done by the coordinator of the national inventory system. So as we said at the beginning, now we can see that we actually have two national inventory compilers. Of course, now it is done by Krtkova, since I am mostly at home with the baby. Before that, the compilation was on my side. But anyway, it's always done by a person from the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. Instead of the overall inventory coordination and compilation on the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute, we are also ensuring the greenhouse gas emissions from industrial processes and product use sector, which is done by another two colleagues, Zuzana and Shimon, who you will see tomorrow in the specific session for the IPPO. In our institute, there is also a position of QA/QC manager specific for the greenhouse gas inventory, whose name is Ristos Arikivi. He will be available also tomorrow during the waste session as well. Then he will be able to provide with the details of a QA/QC system in our inventory. And then also within our institute, the projection of greenhouse gases are done by colleague Zuzana Herrera. The energy sector is actually managed by two companies, where one company, like a research institution, is focused on the stationary combustions. This is the first one, the Krtkova marketing. And then we have a transport research center, which is actually responsible for the sector 1A3 for the transport overall. These two institutions are cooperating with each other regarding the issues where their cooperation might be needed, or where some data has to be shared, and in order to not double count or underestimate or misunderstood some of the part of the inventory, especially in sectors like pipeline transport, or in 1A5 in army, and transport in hospitals and so on. So these are very specific issues, and those are discussed and always very specifically resolved within these two organizations. As we already said, the industrial processes and product use is managed by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. The agriculture sector is mainly based in the Institute of Forest Ecosystem Research, which is based very close to Prague by Mrs. Jana Beranova. For a really long time, this was the only institute which was actually responsible for the inventory in the agriculture sector. But since 2 years ago, when we were preparing new long-term contracts with the sectoral experts, we managed to include another research company, which is actually Crop Research Institute, which is based in Prague. And this institute is cooperating very closely with the Institute of Forest Ecosystem and Research, and these two institutions are developing together outcomes of developments of the inventory relevant to the development of the methodologies, emission factors, and any possible issues related to the inventory in agriculture. So that's actually like an improvement in the latest years on our side. A similar situation is in the LULUCF sector, where it is also based in an Institute of Forest Ecosystem Research with another expert, however, in the same institute. And lately we have included the institution which is called Czech Globe. It's an institution for global climate change. It's a research scientific institution. However, they have a department focused on the forestry and land use issues, and there is an expert who is cooperating very closely with the with the Institute for Forest Ecosystem and Research again since 2 years ago. So that was also a development. And the waste sector is based on Czech Environmental Information Agency, where actually there are 2 experts. Mostly there is here's working the way that there is one specific expert dedicated to the inventory from the waste sector. Another expert is more supervising and providing quality control issues and mostly providing his like a long-term experience with the inventories. So what we have just presented is now shown on this slide, where you can see the specifics of each of the sector and the institutions responsible for the compiling of the sectors. So overall, above these sectoral institutions, they are coordinated by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute, by the National Inventory Compiler. We are responsible to the Ministry of the Environment, but then we are reporting to European Commission and also to UNFCCC by ourselves. So the inventory is approved by the Ministry and we are ensuring the correct reporting towards these international bodies. As you know, then the European Commission or European Union inventory team is then also reporting to the UNFCCC the inventory for the UNFCCC overall for the whole European Union. That is one of the reasons why the deadlines for the inventories reported under the European Union are earlier than the deadline for the UNFCCC, which is the reason. And the cause is that the European Union has to have correct and in-time emission inventories from its member states in order to be able to report to UNFCCC actually. So that is the reason why there are these, let's say, 2 additional deadlines provided by the European legislations, which we have to report in line with. In order to be able to report the emission inventories in any sectors, there is a quite large number of institutions providing some of the data. There should be the most responsibility should be on the Czech Statistical Office. However, there are a number of the data which such a statistical office either can't provide to us because of their data are too sensitive or too detailed or they are not in sufficient detail in which we actually need it for the inventory. And there are a number of sectoral institutions, agencies, or research organizations which are actually collecting some of the data which we are using, either for the reporting by itself or for the verification purposes under the QA/QC. Generally, the national inventory system is funded by a specific funds provided from the Ministry of the Environment towards the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. So even though we have a general budget, of course, as an institution by itself, we are getting a specific budget each year for management of the inventory. These funds are used for ensuring the work of the sectoral experts, possible other research outcomes. So we have a 4-year contract with the sectoral institutions in order to fulfill as much as possible stable and experienced team. Again, some insight in the history. Originally, we have had only 1 year's contract, which haven't been seen very lucky by the review teams. And actually, we got 10 years ago a recommendation that it would be very great to have long-term contracts with the sectoral experts. Or actually the question was how we are ensuring that the knowledge of the sectoral expert is actually staying within the team, since we have only 1-year contract. So this actually helped us, even though it is a little bit against of Czech national law for the general public funding and so on. Since this is an international recommendation and a requirement, we have managed to discuss and managed to get 4 years contracts for the sectoral experts. So this way we are actually ensuring that the knowledge and the inventory is done actually consistently in a time and in the years, and then the knowledge is actually staying with the team, and the national inventory system is as stable as possible. However, these funding are actually sufficient, let's say, for the usual inventory work which has to be done on an annual basis. On the other hand, there is quite large number of needed research in order to provide country-specific emission factors, specific methodologies for each of the sector, and other specific relevant issues. These all issues actually are requiring some research, some additional work, some funding, some evaluation of the data, measurement of the data in laboratories, and so on and so on. And it's very demanding, timely, but also financially. So in order to actually manage this, we actually managed to get a research project which is funded by our research general research provided company. Let's say it's a little bit difficult to translate it, this project actually is helping us to provide additional financial resources to our team to actually develop these additional research and outcomes, which are then helping to improve our inventory very well. A very specific issue was actually, it's almost 10 years ago in 2012, where we had very specific situation in our government and relevant to our budget, where there was happening a governmental project, which was called Green for Savings. And from that there was, by actually provided some of the insulation, let's say, of the houses there, we managed to save some money. And thanks to that, thanks to our team, we actually then obtained from a government some little bit additional funding in that year. So from time to time, this has also happened. But lately, we have to be more reliable on our own research projects provided by some research companies. So it's not moving again. The presentation. No, it's not moving. Does it have some batteries or something? Okay. So the changes in our national inventory system there are not many changes, or actually the international reviews are not expecting or do not like seeing big changes in the inventory system, as you might know. However, we can actually talk that if we are talking about like bigger changes in our inventory, it was actually year 2015, where the national inventory system was actually established as a department of 4 experts in the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. We managed to actually get more experts by the time, and since then we are actually separated on usual pollutants inventory. We are working very closely with them. They are also based on the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. The issues where there is an overlap, like for example agriculture, are prepared together. However, we are officially separate. We are remaining the very close cooperation with the Department of Emissions and Sources related to the emissions of the usual pollutants air emissions. As we already said, that the additional capacity is provided by our research project. And it's not moving again, the presentation.
Okay, we'll give it a minute. See what happens.
Probably.
There you go.
So generally, the preparation of the inventory can be seen from the 3 steps. Where at the beginning there is inventory planning. So you have to plan when you need to receive the specific data for each of the sectors. What improvement has to be done or was promised to the international review teams for the inventory you are just preparing, and so on. So that's actually taking place by the time just after the submission of the inventory for the UNFCCC. When we plan all this, then there become the inventory preparation, which is usually taking place in the autumn, related to the fact that the first inventory to European Union has to be reported by 15th of January, which in our administration means that we have to have the inventory done by the beginning of December in order to prepare all general issues and be able to send it to the ministry for approval. And overall, within any issues, there is inventory management in any of the sectors in getting of any data you might think that are relevant for the inventory preparations and so on. So for the preparation of the inventory, the steps needed to be done are collection of the activity data, selection of the suitable methods, especially in case there is some outcome of some of the research project where you might be providing some changes in the inventory, then you have to be really sure that the method you have developed is suitable and in line with the IPCC methodology actually, and you are able to approve it against the review team. Also development of the country-specific emission factors, emission estimation, then of course QA/QC process. QA/QC is taking place in each of the part of the inventory preparation. Analysis of the key categories, uncertainty analysis, then the reporting by itself, so reporting under the reporting net of the European Union, and archiving. The activity data, as we already said very quickly, are in many cases provided by the Czech Statistical Office. Those are mainly the data for the energy sector, some of the data for the industrial processes sector, some of the data for the agriculture, and from time to time also some other data for verification purposes. We are using as much as possible the data from the EU ETS scheme, since these data are the most detailed and most verified as possible. So in case we are able to use this data, it is actually providing a tier 3 methodology for that specific subsector. In some cases, we have a specific data from the operators or institutions, which is actually providing some of the product or combusting of the fuels and so on. We are using different industrial associations. We are using F-gas registry and other possible research organizations. we are using for the LULUCF State Administration of Land Surveying and Cadastre. We are using the integrated system of waste management and so on. All these specifics will be discussed, of course, under the each presentations for the each specific sectors in the later sessions. Of course, at the higher tiers, methods and country-specific emission factors are preferred to be used, especially for the key categories. So we have never-ending effort in order to develop the new country-specific emission factors and methodologies. We are always encouraged to develop the updated emission factors and methodologies under any review of the UNFCCC. These issues are actually discussed, and the reviewers are going very closely in the details of the each sectors, and are actually expecting that especially for the big key categories, that we have as much as possible country-specific emission factors and are using country-specific methodologies. This is the overall picture of the preparation of the inventory. So as you are saying that the inventory planning is actually taking place under just after the reporting to the UNFCCC. So in May or June, we are actually planning the inventory for the next year already. So we have to define and allocate the specific responsibilities. In case there are necessary additional resources and processes, these have to be discussed and entered by this time already. And the QA/QC plan is prepared for detailed for each of the sectors. In the QA/QC, we are actually updating the QA/QC plan each year very specifically based on the recommendations of the either of the review of the European Union and review of the UNFCCC. You will see more these in detail in a presentation from the QA/QC and from the QA/QC manager. However, the QA/QC plan is every year updated. After that, we are following with the inventory preparation, which is actually including the collecting of the activity data, emission factors, selecting specific methods, data processing and storage, and internal quality control procedures. Those are actually done in the second half of the year. When this is all done, we report by 15th of January to the European Union the first inventory of first version, let's say. This inventory is actually evaluated by the experts of the European Union, and it is possible that in case that some of the experts of the European Union actually found some issues, then we are still updating the inventory for the 15th March European inventory reporting. The inventory is actually evaluated within November till February by implementing quality assurance activities, by expert peer reviews which are done by QA/QC manager, by verification in case there is possibility and there are data available for verification of that specific inventory sector. We are providing the verification of that, and there might actually happen also the international expert review. And then within January and April, we can say that we are actually improving the inventory. We are reporting the inventory, and then we are improving based on the quality assessment of based on the meetings and discussion on the effectiveness of the inventory systems and possible suggestions for the improvements. we are still improving the inventory, and then we are reporting the final inventory to European Union by 15 March, and then by 15 April to UNFCCC. You have to be careful that you can't be doing any changes on the data in the inventory between 15th March and 15th April. That is because then the inventory reported to UNFCCC reported by the European Union will not be in line with the inventories of the member states. So member states are obliged to not change the data in the inventory reported by the 15th of the March till that time they are reporting in April to UNFCCC. In the emission trends, you can see that we are actually managing to decrease the emissions. However, in the latest years, there is an apparent little change on the total emissions, excluding LULUCF and including LULUCF, where the extreme droughts and the bark beetle calamities in our forests actually managed that LULUCF removals are actually becoming emissions. So in last 2 years of our inventory, you can see that where there is including LULUCF emissions, those are usually higher than the emissions excluding LULUCF. Otherwise, the majority on the emissions is on CO2 in our inventory. The big decrease in it is with methane and N2O. On the other hand, increase is apparent for the F-gases generally. Here you can see the development within each sector. So the relatively huge increase is apparent in waste. However, the waste is, on the other hand, the waste is a very small sector in comparison to the energy sector. However, since as you know, the waste is staying on the landfills and so on very long time, then the emissions are still increasing and increasing. There is a waste plan in our government which should be actually focusing on these issues and addressing this in future, and there are very specific requirements how to handle specific waste types in order to not increase the emissions further and further. On the other hand, most of the other sectors, we are not talking about the LULUCF, are indicating a decreasing trends from 1990. And in some cases there is more like a fluctuation. But overall, in the 1990s, the early 90s, the emission trends are always showing a quite huge decrease since all the installations were upgraded by that time, and the installations are more effective and so on. So in the energy sector, the most part shared is done by energy industries. The development within the years for energy industries is always indicating also the climate conditions of that specific year, but also effectiveness of the combustions and type of the fuels which are combusted in order to provide heat and electricity. Lately, there is a tendency to stop using coal in our power plants, which is actually getting in a huge discussions since Czech Republic has its own coal and is actually mining and managing own mines, own coal mines. So there is like an economical discussion behind this. However, anyway, the decreasing of the emissions is very like a tough decision. So lately there is a little bit focus on using mostly natural gas instead of hard coal or brown coal, if it's actually possible. The manufacturing industries and constructions are actually reflecting the development in the industrial processes. And the transport, we can actually see increase if we are looking on the whole total time series, then there is apparent an increase, obviously. And in the other sectors, those are the sectors where there is actually possibility to actually use some other alternative fuels. So there is a possible actually to decrease the emissions as well in energy. In the IPPU sector, we are actually seeing sort of fluctuating trend that is mostly actually reflecting economical situation of the Czech Republic, but generally you can say that it is reflecting actually the development of the economic of the whole world. Because you can see that in 2019 there was a quite huge decrease, and we all remember that in 2008 there was a world economic crisis, and this is apparent in IPPU mostly, and you can see that the industrial processes actually declined their production for a couple of years further after that, and then later on. The trend is more fluctuating, but there is not really apparent huge decline in these sectors. However, on the picture bottom right, you can actually see the share of each of the sectors, subsectors in the IPPU, where you can see that the F gases are actually getting higher and higher share and in the overall emissions of our inventory, while the metal industry, which was has always been the most important industry related to the emission arising actually, is actually slightly decreasing. Then the F gases are getting more and more significant part in our inventory. In agriculture, you can see quite apparent decrease at the beginning of the 90s, but generally for the whole time series. From here, there is actually coming the huge decrease of the methane emissions in overall in our inventory. Actually, that's actually caused mostly by the emissions from agriculture. Very discussed and very significant trend is seen in the LULUCF, as we were actually saying already. In the last 2 years, our removals actually became to be emissions, which is something which is heavily discussed within the reviews, even within the public, within scientific public and within general public, I would say, and within our government, because it's something which is not really expected from us. It's not expected from European Union from the point of view of decreasing of the emissions of carbon neutrality and all these from the Green Deal and so on and so on. This is something which is like causing issues, and is something which we have to be focusing on, how to address these issues. Obviously, it's bringing difficulties in the inventory and in, let's say, discussions and negotiations within the government. Our forests are having about 20-30 years time where they need to actually recover. So so far it was expected that this trend will be still ongoing, increase of the emissions, and it might actually start changing in later on in, I don't know, 5-10 years. However, those are projections provided this year, and since those discussions are going very, very heavily around, the team is actually looking into solutions how to change this trend sooner as it might be actually possible somehow. I'm sure that the details will be also discussed under the LULUCF session with our expert. And as we were already saying, in the waste sector, we can see actually increase. On the other hand, you can see that there is, in comparison to energy or IPPU, there is quite a low amount of the emissions. However, it doesn't mean that they are not significant, because since they are staying a long time in energy, let's say, if we say it very simply, in energy, the fuel is combusted and the emission is released, and that's it. However, in the waste, the waste is here for very, very long time, unless it's also combusted. It's like every year is actually, there is still the emission even from the previous year, and there is further and further. So unless some measurements are provided in the waste sector, the emissions from waste are still increasing. As I was saying, we have a number of updated waste plans in our government, which are actually should be addressing these issues and should be looking in those. So the increase would not be so significant in future years, or we would manage to stabilize the emissions, or even be able to actually decrease the emissions from the waste sector. Another issue under the general issues is how you are going to estimate the key categories. As you know, the IPCC 2006 guidelines is providing two approaches which you can use for estimating of the key categories. The second approach is using uncertainties also in the key category analysis, and we are using both of these approaches for the key category analysis. There is always key category analysis for the base year, for the latest year, including and excluding LULUCF, and for the approach 1 and approach 2. We have very detailed table of the key category analysis in Annex 1 of our National Inventory report. So there is all detailed data visible and apparent the whole approach. So there it can be discussed in very, very detailed in our National Inventory report. The uncertainty analysis is actually provided by us only by Tier 1. However, we have in few sectors, we have very specific inputs which can be said that they are on a Tier 2. And those are uncertainties bases are then included in the overall uncertainties model, which is then estimating the uncertainties for the overall inventory. Again, including LULUCF, excluding LULUCF, and on the level assessment and on the trend assessment. Lately, since LULUCF is becoming actually to be emissive, we are having higher uncertainty in case including LULUCF than we used to have. We used to have uncertainty around 2% on the in the totals including LULUCF. However, now you can see that it's around 7%. And excluding LULUCF is on 3 or 2.5%. So this is actually data from the latest available inventory. Again, very detailed tables and a whole process how the uncertainties are estimated is available in Annex 2 of the National Inventory report. So there is seen all detailed data and all calculations relevant to the uncertainties estimations. Another important thing which you can't forget, you shouldn't forget while compiling inventory is the assessment of completeness. The CRF report, when you will be actually working with the CRF report, which I'm not sure that you are already doing, but that's something you will be required if you're reporting under the reporting under the UNFCCC and European Union. The CRF report available from 2015 is providing a so-called Table 9, which should be indicating some missing issues. So in case the completeness is not done. However, so far we have experienced that we could not be relying only on this table. It's actually not really showing correct values in all the time. So we have developed our own table similar to this, and our QQC manager is actually focusing before sending out the inventory, and is actually preparing these completeness issues. So it's actually comparing the finding of Table 9 with the real data reported in a CRF, and we are actually evaluating if the said specific sector is actually complete or is not complete. We have again example of this let's say questionnaire of completeness is again in annex of our national inventory report. It's again very detailed, so you can't really miss it. The indirect emissions are actually estimated based on the official inventory of the precursor gases reported under the UNECE and conventional long-range transboundary air pollution, and or based on the methane reported under the UNFCCC. So the methodology is used based how it is actually provided by the IPCC, and this way we are estimating the indirect emissions in our inventory. There in this table you can see the development of the indirect CO2 and N2O emissions from each of the categories where the indirect emissions are actually reported. You can see that in most of the cases the emissions are actually also decreasing. However, there is a quite high increase in waste. Again, it's the same issue as we were already discussing. So as you are saying, this is the methodology how the indirect emissions are estimated. It is a methodology provided by the IPCC 2006 guidelines. So there is actually not really a space for much own methodology development. This methodology is simply based on the chemical composition and physical chemical state of the how these emissions are actually arising. So we can't really change the chemistry on the background of these processes. So it's on one hand very simple. The most difficult issue is actually to find the relevant data and to not double count in some of the sectors, because be careful, in some of the sectors of the usual pollutants inventory, there are reported emissions which then belong in a GHG inventory on some little bit different space. So there are, I think, 2 or 3 issues which we are focusing very specifically on to not have double counted these emissions. And very important part of the GHG inventory is actually the archiving. That is something which was very heavily discussed and is very heavily discussed on each of the review of a UNFCCC. I was actually asked when we had in 2017 we had in-country review of UNFCCC. I was very specifically asked from the reviewers to show the archive, how it actually looks. And they chose one little number from the huge calculation sheets from energy, and they wanted us, or actually me, to. I'm saying me because in the archive we have access only the coordinator. That's why I'm saying it like this, because the archive is having very specific requests how the archiving should be done for the inventory. And I was asked to show the review team the very specific number of any type of emission, any type of sector you might imagine, and find it in the archive. You have to be able to demonstrate the reviewers of UNFCCC that you are able to get from the archive the whole inventory. The archive is done for the case that there will be a huge change of the experts in the inventory, or there has to be and the data can't be handed over or something like that. So the archive should serve for that purpose, that anybody new who will come into the world of the greenhouse gas inventory will get the archive of the data of the whole sectors and will be able to compile the inventory based on them. So we are archiving the all activity data, the calculations is the results of the inventory, and another possible documents. So it's the results of the QAQC, it's results of the research documents. We were asked to actually even archive the activity data on the details. In some cases, those are very, very huge data. So we are sort of choosing what type of data we are archiving on our archive, and what type of data I'll actually archive, let's say, in a statistical office where it actually has to stay because of the law of statistical service and so on. So in our archive, we have actually data for the inventory since 2008, meaning the submission which was actually submitted in 2010. The archive is done on it's a specific server of the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute, which is backed up each, I think, 3 minutes every day and all the time. So in case something go bad, there are another 2 or 3 copies of the archive. So it's always our IT department is always able to find some type of copy of the archive. In this archive, there is access only for a coordinator of the National Inventory System and the IT administrator. No one else is actually having access there. Then, in case we are asking the sectoral experts to provide the data for the archive, we are providing sort of a mirror in our FTP server, which we have for communication with the sectoral experts. They provide their data there, and then the coordinator is actually mirroring and copying this data to this backed up server, specific server located in the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. Another copy of the archive, except of those official backups, are on the desks owned by the National Inventory System coordinator. The archiving is done always after the official submissions to the UNFCCC. So after that, all the data are collected and everything is actually archived. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is just an example how it can look, how we see it. So there is archiving for each of the sectors, overall inventory, key categories, QA/QC, all the submissions and so on for the years as we were actually showing. And under each of the category, there is then specific structure as is actually expected for that specific sector, the way it is actually prepared for each of the sector. And after archiving, we should not forget on the cross-cutting issues. There is actually a number of cross-cutting issues within the inventory, mostly within energy and IPPU sector. I am not able to get to the next slide. Okay. So I said already, energy and IPPU. Be very careful on issues in non-energy use of fuels. There is very specific the details, what type of CO2 is actually released in energy, what types is actually removed or stored in some materials from the industrial processes, and what types is actually released emissions more in IPPU processes. So that's something to be very careful about, where to report and to not double count or actually miss something. Very careful when we are getting data or you're getting data for the metal industry, so careful on the cross-cutting issues within 1A to A and to C. Similar issues on the chemical industry, so 1A to C and to B. And then the non-energy, as I said, the non-energy use of fuels, so 2D and generally 1A, because in 1A it can be actually anywhere, but there are very specific issues where it can be. For our case, all data are reported directly by the Czech Statistical Office. However, we then have to very specifically allocate them in the inventory in the area where it actually belongs. And other cross-cutting issues are within energy and waste related to the combustion of the waste. Careful to not double count the emissions, and actually the calculation procedures of combustion of emissions from combustion of waste the methodology is different under energy and under waste. I am reminding this because we had some issues related to the inventory reviews of UNFCCC related to these issues. So those has to be very clearly specified and clarified how this is actually done. Then, in case your country is providing some urea production, you have to be careful on the cross-cutting issues within IPPU and agriculture. So the specific will be actually in IPPU. In our cases, since 2013, we don't have any production of urea anymore. So that's not something which has to be discussed so heavily. However, till then, this was very closely looked on to be able to not double count the issues. There are a few issues within agriculture and waste, and even LULUCF. And there is also some issues within LULUCF and waste. And those issues has to be coordinated together, and the sector experts has to be in close contact in order to ensure that the emissions are reported on the correct level. And the coordinator should be actually aware of these issues and ensure that the emissions are reported as precise as possible. So I believe that this is everything from my side for today. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm not sure if you have any questions, or I'm not going to be here later on, but you can even have, if you think about some questions later, you can either ask my colleagues, of course, or you can ask written questions and I can react later via email for that specific one.
Thank you so much. And we really appreciate you being here today, even though that you are on leave. This was extremely helpful. And what I would suggest is, since we have just a few minutes, that questions related to the specific sectors of the inventory, we can hold those until the discussions on the sectors. But I think Mrs. Krtkova could answer questions about general inventory planning, archiving, and that type of thing right now, and also the energy sector while we have you here. Okay, good. So I'll give the floor to Pavlina, and maybe you can coordinate the questions on your end.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has been really pleasure to see how much work is yet to be done from our side, and that development of greenhouse inventory is a process that lasts really a year long. So it's not something that can be done for just a couple of months. That time scale that you presented was really, really impressive. What I wanted to ask is a little more about the institutional cooperation and legal background for development of greenhouse gas inventories. So I was wondering, you said that the Ministry of Environment is responsible and they provide funds to you, so you coordinate the development of inventory. Is that legally binding? Is that stipulated or regulated in some law? Do you then sign memorandums of cooperation with other institutions that you engage, or you just prepare contracts? So I was wondering what is the background of all of these institutional arrangements, and if you can provide some hints and tips that can help us stipulating this. I'm asking this because the Ministry of Environment and Physical Planning has just adopted its strategy for climate action and is finalizing the law on climate action. So everything that you can suggest or recommend, we can include, because this is the right point for us to legalize the greenhouse gas inventory development. Thank you.
Yes. So actually, the responsibility for the greenhouse gas emission inventory is managed by the Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. Is specified in the official establishment document of the CHMI. If you understand what I mean. There is a very detailed document which is based on the like a law of working of these type of institutions in the Czech Republic. And there is a list of responsibilities we have, and one of the responsibilities is actually management and coordination of the national inventory system of the greenhouse gases. So that's very official document actually. Instead of that, even though we have this like officially for the institute, instead of that, we are getting from the minister specific.
It's kind of like an endorsement.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Specific endorsement to coordinate the inventory for, now we have it for 10 years. We used to have it for 2-3 years, and then they said that it will be anyway done by us. So we have it. We have like Marketa is having in office very like official document from the minister that we are giving you this responsibility that you will be coordinating the inventory. So that is related, let's say, government and Czech Hydrometeorological Institute. Related to the institutions, we have the contracts, and within these contracts, it's not only the, let's say, the financial issues, but there is this type of memorandum issues included in the contracts actually. So the contracts are actually very detailed. There is very detailed funding. It's very detailed timeline. The funding are let's say, provided by like 3 times in a year based on the deadlines of the inventory. So sort of always when the sectoral institutions provide some data, then the national inventory compiler actually check it and sign that it's correct. And based on that, part of the financial resources for that year can be provided to that sectoral organization. So I would say that the memorandum of that is actually part of the contracts. Related to the institutions who are providing the data with the Czech Statistical Office, we have a memorandum of a cooperation. It's like a both way because we're also providing some data for them to provide actually data for our purposes. So that's for the Czech Statistical Office. We have this type of memorandum with some few of other institutions, but not so official, let's say. In many cases, some sectoral and scientific research institutions or some of these are actually just from the status that they are existing and they are obliged to provide the data for the, let's say, government or governmental body which is dedicated to work, to provide some work for them. So that's actually us as well. It happens that we found that we need some additional data, some new data and so on, and that it is possibly difficult. So then we are sending like official request letter explaining the situation of requirements of UNFCCC and European Union and so on and so on. And if this is not enough, these data are asked by the Ministry of Environment. So we send the request to a dedicated person of the Ministry of Environment, and this person actually then ensures this data to get for our purposes. Did I forget something? I think that's how it generally is. I hope I answered your question, or if I missed something, please remind me.
Yes, thank you very much. Just because we were not able to see very closely from the images, the last year you have officially submitted is 2019 to UNFCCC, and you are now developing the inventory for 2020. Is that right?
Yes. You are basically preparing inventory for year -2. Let's say you will be. You are starting to prepare the inventory for previous year. So now we are preparing, as we were saying, like that you are preparing the inventory. Let's say in the second half of the year, you are preparing for the inventory for the previous year. So now for 2020, and then this is reported in next year in January, March, and April, and then it's already year -2 because then it will be 2022. Yeah, and then so that's always like it's something which is also sometimes discussed by some governmental bodies who don't really know the details of the inventory, and they're asking, why are you reporting it so late? Why are you reporting years -2? It's really like now we don't care. We want data for now. So then we have to be like explaining, but the statistical data are actually done by the end of the year. So you can't really prepare it. Data for from the statistical office we are getting now or in November for the previous year. So for 2020. So and the inventory is so complex that you can't really prepare it within like a week and send it.
Yeah.
So yes, that's how it is.
Thank you. My colleague from the Macedonian Academy of Sciences and Arts has another question.
Thank you, Eva. It was interesting to hear your experience in improving your process. I have a question regarding the research activities for country-specific emission factors that you mentioned. You have some specific research funding. I didn't catch from where. Do you have this kind of funding regularly to update these emission factors? And I'm interested whether you include the companies, for example, the coal mines, coal power plants, in this process regularly, because in our case, we have problems with the companies to get their data from the laboratory results for their quality of the fuels. So what is the process and are these research fundings from other projects outside this fund that you have from the ministry, or
Yes.
are part of this?
Yeah, ministry is not actually able to provide like additional funding. That's something always discussed and always declined, let's say. Not always, but lately it is like that. But let's say it's like reflecting the situation of overall government. So we can't blame only like the Ministry of Environment. It's not like that. So in case we want to have some additional research, get this, for example, country-specific emission factors, we have to find some project. So in history, we were trying to have some Life Plus projects. Under the European Union and so on. But these projects you are asking about, it's actually provided by, it's called Technical Agency of the Czech Republic, which is actually agency providing like a research project for like anything you can imagine, like within art, within energy, within industry, within waste, within like really anything. However, what type of project is actually signed out is sort of recommended by the ministry. So we have prepared like a general outline what type of project we would like to. This project actually includes development of the methodologies in every sector there is under the GHG inventory. And this way the project was supported by the Ministry of Environment towards these agencies. So this agency would actually make this call, and then we actually got into this call as a consortium, let's say, of the institutions. So this in this project we are again as a coordinating institution, and all the sectoral institutions are officially part of the research project. And each of the research institutions is then possibly even assigning the coal mining associations. So while actually writing the proposal for the project, if I will be talking specifically about the energy sector, our sector expert was already having in mind that he will need to work closely with, let's say, research. There is a research institution related to our coal mines. There are few very specific ones. So he already knew that he will need to cooperate with them. He had called them if that will be possible, of course, provided some funding. And he were planning funding for himself within this project in the way that he will be paying this type of research coal mining organization also. So this organization is not, let's say, officially part of that project, but is providing data for us. It will be very difficult to have a project of like 50 institutions, so like administratively. So we have there the sectoral organizations, and those sectoral organizations are actually then managing those very specific research in laboratories, in coal mines, and so on and so on. And managing to get the outcomes. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
I don't think that there are other questions, so I think that we can make a break. When do we come back?
Excellent. I would suggest that we come back at 11, let's see, give us 10 minutes, 11:25. Would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. And just to make a note that after the break, since this is a study tour and you're coming to Prague, we'll have a short city tour, so you don't want to miss the tour. So we'll see you at 25 past. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye. All right, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.